Restaurant Unstoppable. What the most successful restaurateurs know that you don't.
Well, I was born into the industry. I am fourth, and some may can say fifth generation restaurateur.
I did not know that.
And my dad was Amy Morton, who did many restaurants, but is most remembered for Morton's Steakhouse that he opened in '78. My grandfather, Morton C. Morton, was a restaurateur on Chicago's South Side. My dad worked with him.
Okay.
And he also had a restaurant called Morton's, actually 3 of them in varying locations. He opened in '32, right after Prohibition ended. His father was known as the neighborhood pharmacist and had a back room where they were selling something really good out of coffee cups.
This is Prohibition times, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I can only imagine. Awesome. So at what point so when you first started working, was it just because your dad owned restaurants and it's an easy job to get, or is it what you wanted to do? Like, when did you know this is what you wanted?
It went back and forth. So my first memory of being in a restaurant. I mean, my dad worked for Playboy for 15 years. He was vice president of Playboy International and built all the clubs and hotels around the world.
I don't think a lot of people know that Playboy started in Chicago.
Playboy started in Chicago.
I think the Playboy Mansion in Los Angeles or wherever it is.
Well, the real Playboy Mansion was here in Chicago, which is where my parents met.
Oh.
And my dad had a little restaurant called the Walton Walk. That was a little sneak joint, considered the first key club in Chicago, one of the first key clubs I think that people knew about.
Okay.
And there was a guy named Victor Lowndes, who I grew up knowing as Uncle Victor, who was Hef's best friend from University of Chicago. And Victor was a man on the town, and he discovered the Walton Walk, and Hef had printed in his attic on a hand crank the very first issue of Playboy in 1955 and wrote every single article himself.
There's a really great documentary, like a docu-series on like the startup of Playboy.
It's very good.
I remember Victor being in that.
He's in it a lot. My dad is season 4.
Okay.
My mother was very mad he was short and not handsome, though, because my dad was actually very tall, the tallest of all the guys.
Yeah, that's funny.
But Hef loved it, or Victor loved it, and went to Hef and said, "This is what we need to create the empire." And
What's
they went
this
to my
exactly?
A club.
Gotcha.
So they went to my dad, and they asked my dad to join them, and my dad joined as vice president, and he built, from that moment on, every hotel and club through '72, when he said he got tired of raising his hand to go to the bathroom.
Yeah, the Playboy story. I mean, I think when we think of, like, we don't think about entrepreneurism when we think Playboy, but the truth is, like, it's an incredible entrepreneurial story.
Hef was brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant. They all were.
And being so close to that organization, what were some of the lessons that you think you learned, maybe subconsciously, from just being able to observe that?
Well, I saw the entrepreneurship from my dad always, and his passion, his commitment, and it's really why he left, because they had gone public, and his hands were tied.
Yeah.
I don't think I really saw anything different in Playboy than I did in all the restaurants my dad went on to do later.
What was his passion?
My dad?
Yeah.
Hospitality.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was showtime, as he would say. Before he'd unlock the doors, he'd say to me, "It's showtime, Aim." And he was on his stage at home. He had a super different persona, very quiet, zero small talk. But that door opened, and he was on it, and he could talk to anyone about anything. And it was magical to watch him.
So what were the biggest lessons? I know you were working with him side by side for a while, like 10 years, or almost a decade.
So my first memory of going to work with him was when I was 10. He was building his first restaurant called Arnie's, which was his flagship.
The steakhouse.
No. Arnie's was a continental restaurant. It was known
Okay.
for continental cuisine. It was the first B&B scene restaurant Chicago had ever seen. It opened in 1973 in the same building, the Newberry Plaza, as Morton's. He actually had 4 restaurants in that building.
Okay.
And Arnie's was open for 5 years before he did the steakhouse.
Okay.
And we would go every Saturday morning and sweep it out after the contractors had been there. And I loved going in there and hearing the grit under his shoes. And he was in love with every aspect of the business. And he wanted to be there. He wanted to make sure it was clean as a whistle. He wanted just to be in this space and live it and breathe it. Though it wasn't until I was 15 that I might have been 14. I usually say 15.
We'll
Summer
round
of
up.
July of 77
Yeah.
was, I was 14, my first restaurant job, where he opened a restaurant in the town we lived in.
Okay.
And that is up on the North Shore of Chicago called Highland Park. And I was the crepe girl at the buffet. We had a grand buffet, and that's in fact all he did. He built the restaurant because he felt people were tired of having to get dressed up and go to the
Yeah.
city. He wanted to create a place where people could be dressed up and, stay in town.
Yeah.
So I was the Sunday brunch crepe girl, and then went on from there to do basically every position. And I
Beautiful.
worked with him until 1989 when I opened my first restaurant.